So I want to first welcome everybody to our second monthly training. I haven't come up with a snazzy name yet, but these trainings are designed with you in mind, trying to make sure that you have the tools and the skills that you need to be able to facilitate um, your 4-H program effectively and efficiently. We know that there's only one of you, but you have volunteers and you have parents who are more than likely willing to help if you just ask. Parents and volunteers are not mind readers, and so we have to be cognizant and willing to put ourselves out there to be able to ask for help when we need it. And so today's presentation is going over organizational skills, and it's going to be delegating and involving parents.
Skills that maybe we don't have?
Absolutely. And it's important to recognize
maybe it's the better word.
Absolutely. So it's important for us to recognize those skills and identify where our volunteers, where their interests are. I think that's huge for us, and I think sometimes we get, how do I say this, we get kind of lost in the middle of it all, and we forget that other people know how to do really cool things if we just ask, right? So it's pretty significant for us to be able to recognize that. And so it's important to recognize that as an effective leader, which you are a leader as a county extension agent, we have to know and understand the benefits of motivating others to become involved. And with that comes understanding their motivations, okay? So for some, we've got to think about, well, maybe they just want to do it just to help. And that's great for us, but maybe we capitalize on some of those that maybe we have some college kids needing some internship hours. Maybe we have some volunteers needing some hours for a service organization. Like I know that like the Junior Service League and a few other organizations, you need service hours, right? And so we've got to understand their motivations, and a lot of times, y'all, parents will come because they're going to be there anyway with their kids, and that's important. And so it's important for us to recognize that if they're going to be there anyway, most likely they're going to be willing to help, you know. So this is one of my favorite phrases, but we've got to learn to work smarter, not harder, right? There's one of you. There's technically 40 hours in a week that you're supposed to work, technically. If you're like me, you average between 50 and 60, depending on the time of the year or what you have going on or maybe a project. But we've really got to look at that to make sure that you understand and you know what your limitations are as a professional. We can only go so far before we just give out. Has anybody had the burnout happen recently? Where you just felt like, I'm done for the week. I can't do anymore. I can't give any more of myself. If I get one more phone call, you know, or you're just gonna melt, right?
Yeah.
And so we've got to
forget.
Karen, what?
I was gonna answer your question. Not in this job yet, but in my other job, yeah, lots of times.
Yeah, and so it can happen. And so our goal is, as a professional, is to keep you healthy, mentally, physically, emotionally, in every aspect of the word. We've got to keep you healthy so that way you keep functioning. So the goal of delegation is to clearly establish responsibilities and deadlines so that you can empower others. If you are like me, I've learned to delegate. being an extension professional. I was horrible at it when I first started as a county extension agent. I thought it was my job to make sure everything happened. And slowly and surely, things changed for me, and that was okay. And so, if we can empower others, it may not happen exactly the way you want it, but sometimes, as long as the task gets done, we should be thankful and grateful and know that you can check that off your list, right? How many of you feel like you're a good delegator? Or delegating is one of your strong leadership styles? Karen, I see that. I know, are you trying to say something? So being a delegator doesn't mean that you just completely relinquish control, you know? It doesn't mean that you just say, here, you do it, and walk away. It means that you guide and lead and do so in such a fashion that somebody else feels empowered to get the task done, but knowing that you're still there to support them. Gail, I'm not sure if you're trying to say something, but maybe it would be better if you put it in text chat, because I can't hear you.
Meredith, can you hear me now?
Yes.
It keeps telling me I have too much background noise, so I think I need to turn my air conditioning off.
Okay.
It's crazy. But I'm here and I'm listening, and I have a problem with delegating, so that's why I'm listening.
Yeah, and so thanks for admitting that, because that takes a lot of courage, right? It's important for us to recognize, I think one of the hardest things that we're so hard on ourselves sometimes, but if we can recognize, and I'm not going to call it a fault because I don't think it's a fault, but if we can recognize maybe an area that we're not strongest in, then we can better task ourselves and teach ourselves to become stronger in these areas. And so some of the ways that you can do this is in delegation, you involve more people, right? We know that the sum of our parts is greater than just the sum of one, right? When we work in as a team, we are stronger. And so we know that if we can pull a team together, it results in a better product, right? 2 minds are greater than 1. How many remember that old saying? And then, not only do you have a better product, but it takes it a step further and you have more support from those that are involved, right? So your team has the buy-in. You have a support system now that you can lean on, and maybe it's a foods project. Maybe it's a leadership project. Maybe leadership isn't your strong suit, so you need somebody to come in and work with your council. Maybe maybe it's livestock judging. Maybe it's project-based. Maybe it's not. Maybe you just need some tasks in the office done. Maybe you need some filing done. Maybe you need some stuff sorted. Whatever it is, we've got to be able to effectively delegate that task. And I'll go through the steps of delegation here in a minute. But effectively and efficiently delegate that task so that way people feel empowered to do it. And then we recognize them for that, right? And so when we go full circle, when we take it full circle and we can empower others to complete a task and we recognize them for completing that task, maybe it's just a simple thank you. Maybe it's a $5 gift card to Dairy Queen. Maybe it's, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's a 4-H pin, or maybe you keep some tokens of appreciation in your office. Whatever it is, that's up to you, but we've got to take it full circle, right? Think about how many tasks you've done and nobody recognized you or thanked you for. right? And sometimes our job is a thankless job. It is. Sometimes being a volunteer is a thankless, it goes unnoticed. But it's important, and it's important to recognize that as the county extension agent, as the leader, it's your job to recognize people. Your team is only as strong as you make them. Okay? So when we are going to delegate something, it's important to recognize that we can't just give them the big picture and expect them to run with it, right? We've got to break it down into smaller chunks. So we've got to explain the task, define the task, and tell them where your starting point is and where your finishing point is and what your end goal is, right? And then we've got to define the power or the authority that person is going to have and clearly define that. And so you hear us talk a lot about clearly defining volunteer roles, right? And you'll hear me say, if you've heard me go through an orientation with our 4-H volunteers at a district event, especially if it's at a camp, I will clearly tell them it is not your job to hand down the consequences. It is simply your job to inform me of issues, and then I will handle them. Because we want to clearly define that role, and we don't ever want there to be any gray area, okay? So after we have explained the task, inform them of what their role is going to be, we need to talk to them about any pertinent policies or guidelines or maybe some stipulations that you have around the task. That sounds really, really intense, but it's not. We've just got to tell them, give them the framework. And then we've got to give them the resources. So if you're delegating a task to a leader, let's put this in terms of what this means to us. Maybe we are talking about recruiting a leader for a food and nutrition project, okay? We've got to clearly define the expectations. Say, Susie, I would really, I'd like for you to be a leader, know that I'm going to support you in whatever you do. I would like you to meet with the group 6 times over the course of the next year. And in those 6 times, we're going to have an educational component. We have explore guides that we can use. Susie, your role as a leader is simply to help guide and shape the project. So understand that if there's any safety issues or anything going wrong, or maybe you get a parent that is being a little difficult, just send them to me and I'll handle it. And then we tell them about our relevant, maybe, in the foods project we've got to talk about safety guidelines, right? I don't know that it's completely safe to let an 8-year-old run free with a kitchen knife, right? We've got to give them some guidelines on what we expect and talk about our age divisions. And then we've got to talk about the resources. So maybe we tell Susie, hey, we have these wonderful explore guides available to us. We have some curriculums available to us that you can use. The lessons are already there. It tells you everything start to finish. And then we say, okay, let's just start with lesson 1, right? Let's just start with the first meeting, and let's get some tasks lined out. We need to invite the kids. We need to plan the lesson, and we need to talk about what our goals are going to be. And then we establish the timeline and the deadlines. How many of you have gotten a task and all of a sudden you have no deadline, so you don't know when it's due? So then it just keeps getting pushed further and further and further down your to-do list. Has that happened to anybody? Please tell me I'm not the only one.
You are not the only one.
It happens. And so what I've done to myself, right, is I've established quasi-deadlines for myself, right? I put deadlines in my calendar for myself to get tasks done so that way they don't fall off the calendar. For example, We know that tomorrow Texas reports are due by 5 o'clock for the fourth and final quarter. That is a very hard deadline, and I know I'm up against that deadline, so we're going to get it done, right? But we've got to talk about those deadlines and things that we've got to get done in a timely fashion. We can't notify kids the day before the meeting and expect them to show up. It doesn't work, right? How many of you have done that? And you're like, oh man, I forgot to call the kids. Oh, I forgot to tell somebody. Has that happened to anybody? And then you have poor attendance? So our programs and our educational components that we provide, our educational programs or activities that we provide are only as good as our marketing. We can plan an extraordinary program, but if we don't tell people about it, or if we don't give people ample time to plan to be there with us, it's not going to happen. People get busy. We hear that day in and day out, right? Oh, I'm so busy. Sorry, I was busy. Sorry, couldn't be there. I had Girl Scouts. I had church. I had, right now it's football season. So we hear all of that. So what are some tasks? Let's brainstorm. What are some things you can delegate? Do y'all have any ideas? Maybe it's not being a project leader. How many of you need somebody to bring refreshments to your council meeting? Yeah. Brainstorm. Share that list with me. What are some things that you need help with that you think you can delegate out? And I promise you, the list is longer than you think.
Well, I know that I'm probably going to need some help with shooting sports.
Yes, Karen, you will need help with shooting sports. Most definitely.
There are always, this is Denise, and there are always projects that, you know, I don't have expertise in. For example, we have kids who want to do horse things. Well, that is not my expertise area. And so I have talked to some of those parents who are a part of that project or who want that, and I'm like, I'll do whatever I can to help you. I can provide you with, you know, copies or materials, but we're going to have someone else to actually be the leader because that's not something that I feel comfortable doing.
Completely agree. There are things that I just don't feel comfortable doing, and there's going to be things like that. But even things that are outside of your comfort zone, maybe you just need some help. What are some things you just need some help with? That if you think, gosh, if I just had a little bit of help.
Well, I know that there are people who are willing and able to do some of my food classes, but I like them, but I'm probably going to have to let some people help me do those just to make sure I get the numbers done.
That's pretty important, Karen. And that's the hard part, right? Because we don't want to give up the stuff that we like, but sometimes we have to be able to get every iron in the fire that we have going, right? And completed, to get every task completed. So when we talk about parents, parents are different, they're different than our volunteers. Sometimes they're the same person, but we look at a parent differently because they have a different buy-in, right? Sometimes a parent just wants to be a parent and support their child. And so when we look at this, we have got to understand where parents are at and what they're looking for, okay? So when they look at the 4-H program, they're looking for us to provide a safe environment, especially in today's day and age. It is imperative that we provide that safe environment. That is why it is so significant for us to make sure that any volunteers, anybody that is going to be working with anybody other than their own child, is screened and vetted through our Texas 4-H Youth Development Program. Okay? it's important for us to be able to provide that. They trust you as a leader to be able to provide that environment. And one of the assurances we can give them is that we do screen and train our volunteers, right? So the other thing they look at is,
Meredith, I have a question.
yes,
So how, like, let's say I have a food class, a food challenge class. Parents show up. Okay. All those parents that show up, do those all have to be volunteers, or if they're just sitting watching, they're okay?
If they're sitting watching, they're okay. But if it's going to help you, we really need to screen them.
Okay, I don't know everybody's name. So, I mean...
Well, maybe that's something you do at the beginning, Karen. Maybe that's an icebreaker time. Or maybe that's, you know, last night I didn't know everybody in the room in B County, so I made it a point personally to go up, introduce myself to everybody, and ask them for their name.
Right. And then how do you know that they're already, and then did you go check to see if they were, you know, good?
Well, last night was a little different because I was leading the program, so the parents were just there with their children, right? They weren't helping me in any way, shape, or form. But if they're going to, if it's a one-time thing, okay, we can understand.
Right.
But if it's a continual thing, like maybe you have the same parent show up every time, just say, hey, you know, and maybe you go back and check and see if they're a screen volunteer.
After.
And then explain that to them.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Okay? So, not only are parents looking for a safe environment, though, they're also looking for relationships that are going to support their child, right? More and more, we have parents that are looking for support systems. And those support systems look different in every county. They look different in every place. But they want to know that when they are leaving their child or that they are entrusting their child to us, that our adults care. And we know they care, right? They wouldn't be a club manager, they wouldn't be a volunteer if they didn't care, right? But that's what they're looking for. And so they're also looking for an organization that has structure and communication and a detailed framework of what the expectations are. And so maybe this is where you develop a new member packet, like welcome to 4-H, welcome to Calhoun County 4-H, welcome to Matagorda County 4-H. This is what we have, this is what we offer, this is how we operate. Okay? And then you've got to, in that, at the same time, you've got to establish your communication plan. It's crazy to think that we just start sending monthly newsletters, right? So maybe when you, at the end of the week, you send an email to all your new members that have never been in 4-H before and say, hey, welcome to B County 4-H. We're glad to have you. My name is Jessica. I'm the county extension agent for Family and Community Health. Robin works with livestock. I work with youth leadership and family community health projects, such as like the foods and fashion projects. We send out a monthly newsletter, so stay tuned for information in there. You can follow us on our Facebook, and let me know if you have any questions. Quick, sweet, to the point, but you've established your communication plan, right? So they know to look for that kind of stuff, right? You've established the structure and you've established what goes on in B County 4-H. And then, ultimately, they want to be able to do this as a family. They want to come together as a family unit. And I've always said this is the stark difference between FFA and 4-H. And I'm not saying that our friends in FFA don't do it right. They do a lot of things right. In fact, last night I gave them mad credit because they do parliamentary procedure so right. Right? They do it right. They do it well. But us in the 4-H program, and if you think about it, the FFA program, and I was a product of the FFA program, I was a product of the 4-H program. When I was in FFA, I did things with my ag teacher, And that became, both of them became a second mom, so to speak. You know, they became my support system at school. They became mentors for me, which was great. But when I was in 4-H, some of the best things that I loved about it was that we did things as a family. We raised show pigs as a family. In the afternoons, my dad, my brothers, myself, my mom, we all went outside and worked pigs. We all, you know, we did things together. And so that's what people are looking for. And so if we can provide those family opportunities, which is why the Clover Kid program is so important. And I'm not saying you have to offer the Clover Kid program, but at least recognize them, right? I'm not saying you have to have a very orchestrated program for Clover Kids, but they can go to a 4-H club meeting, they can do things and have fun. They can't compete in anything, but if they can do something as a family, we have a greater chance of success of keeping them in the program, okay? So when we talk about a safe learning environment, we've got to talk about our screening, our orientation, our training, and how we work with volunteers. We've got to educate them on risk management. And maybe it's not to the degree that you and I are trained, or maybe that I'm trained. I feel like that's all I think about as a 4-H specialist. It is ingrained in my brain to think about the what ifs. How many of you feel like that? It is ingrained in your brain as an extension professional to think about the what ifs. It's pretty intense. But we've got to let some of that go, right? And we can minimize risk to a degree, but then we've got to let kids have fun, right? Just last night when I was in B County, if I would have been so worried about the kids when they were playing anatomy clubs, about, oh my gosh, they can't touch each other, they're in their personal space, well, they have had fun? Not at all, right? So we've got to give them those hands-on fun, and I can't say it enough, fun learning experiences. And then we've got to give them a voice in the program. We've got to let the kids decide what they want to do. It's easy for us to decide what they're going to do. But your program will flounder if there is no voice, if there is no youth voice. And we've got to communicate that to our club managers. More oftentimes than not, I hear, oh yeah, my club manager runs the meeting, we don't do anything. That is so disheartening. We are a youth-serving organization, so we have to have a youth voice in the development of our program. So when we talk about relationships and things that kids get from other adults, this is how we get the buy-in, right? We get parents involved quickly. So there's research that says that if you don't touch a volunteer or a parent or in the first 60 days of their involvement in your program, you're going to lose them. You're going to lose them and they're never going to come back, okay? So we've developed tools and instruments. We have the surveys now online in Enhancing the Club Experience documents on how to engage parents. We have a survey. What would you like to do? What do you feel comfortable doing? Do you have any hobbies, or what's your profession? Would you mind sharing this with the kids? And then we've got to support them in that role, right? We've got to invite them to different events, trainings, meetings, recognition, that kind of stuff. Did anybody invite their parents or volunteers to this training? So these trainings are designed for you, but they're also designed for volunteers. So we can engage them. If they feel like they're learning and that we're engaging them, we stand a better chance of keeping them. And then we've got to recognize them. And I've talked a lot about recognition, but I really, really wholeheartedly feel like that's important. National Volunteer Week is in April. It's important to utilize that week. It's important to utilize any type of recognition that you can. And so we've got to, when we talk about organization and structure, we've got to keep parents informed. We've got to maybe have an annual calendar, right? And be clear in our expectations. Be clear in our volunteer roles, our handbooks and things like that. And these things are developed for you. You just have to use them. All of this stuff is available for you on the Texas 4-H website. The 4-H faculty team has spent countless hours developing resources for you to be able to use. You've just got to take all of these resources and then mentor your new volunteers so that they feel successful in their role. So what can parents do to help? What are some things you think parents can do? Maybe you have a parent that has a really cool career. Maybe we ask them to be the program and share 10 to 15 minutes at a 4-H club meeting, right? Maybe it's as simple as asking a parent to bring refreshments, or helping the kids to organize a community service project. But we've got to empower those parents, because the parents will then turn into long-term volunteers for us. So when we talk about family involvement, we've got to really look at what events we offer that are appropriate and engaging for families. I think we do a really good job of that in the 4-H program. We've just got to keep doing it. How many of you have thought about doing like a family fishing day, or a mommy and me cooking session, or a daddy and me cooking with dad type of event? Those are all things that we can do to engage the family unit and involve them in our program at a deeper involvement level. So I hope these training slides were valuable for you. I did get these training slides from National 4-H, so I need to give them credit. But on the national website, there is a series of professional development topics available for you. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. I am always available for you and can always help. If you need volunteer training, I'm willing to come. Just let me know. I'm willing to come train volunteers. I'm willing to come train youth on different topics. Just please know that I'm available. So thanks for spending part of your lunch hour with me. I hope y'all get some time to go break and eat some lunch. And we will see y'all down the road.
Bye, Mary.